So you're a cool priest, are you?
A cool priest?
Yeah.
No, I'm a big reader with no friends. Are you a cool person?
Oh, I'm a pretty normal person.
A normal person?
Yeah, a normal person.
What makes you a normal person?
Well, I don't believe in God.
Howdy, Theologian.
Howdy.
Have you watched all of Fleabag?
Yes, twice.
It's so good.
It's so good.
Oh, so you're like a cool pastor.
Cool priest.
A cool priest.
He's like, no, I'm not a cool priest.
No. I read a lot of books.
Yeah.
Are you like a normal person?
Yeah.
So good.
I know. I mean, the way that she looks at the camera is, it's amazing. Like the way she'll like cut her eyes quickly to the camera to like connect with the audience.
Totally.
Nothing. I've never seen anything like it. It's amazing.
It's more subtle than Jim Halpert.
Oh yeah, no, I've never seen anything like the way she does it, where it's like you would do it with like your weird family members, where you like look at your sibling or something, but you have to do it like real fast so they don't see you, so the family members don't see you like make fun of them. But like that's what she does. It like makes you feel like you're her best friend, just like standing there, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is."
I love it. And someone recommended it to me. It was a woman in my previous church, and we're about the same age, and she's like, I'm going to recommend this to you, but just know, like, it's pretty out there and raunchy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of awkward for me to recommend it to my own pastor.
Yeah, I could see that.
But definitely, you'd love it. And I was like, all right.
Because he's not, in the show, he's like called the hot priest.
Yeah.
Like, that's
totally.
his.
Yeah, the hot priest.
His moniker. Yeah.
It's great. Ordination then, huh?
Yeah. I mean, we talked
Why do we even have priests?
Well, we talked about the church last week, and we talked about, the benefit of, I think, being a part of the church as, just a member, as a congregant, as like little like piece of the body, if you will. Sure. But I do think part of our conversation about the church is incomplete if we don't talk about the way that the authority of the church has been is sustained, how how the church kind of confers authority to certain people and not to others, and how that's changed over time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, to me, a way to talk about that certainly is to talk about ordination, because essentially ordination is saying, okay, we are going to kind of confer some authority onto these particular people to do particular things.
The definition, ordain, to invest officially with ministerial or priestly authority.
Yeah.
Right? So you're right. Like power essentially given to individuals for certain tasks or responsibilities within the framework of the church.
Right. And, the way that the church determines who gets that power and to what extent they're able to wield that power. Mm-hmm. And at different times and is in different places throughout the church's history, that power has extended beyond the local church because of the connection that the church has had to
the relationship it's had with society at large
and governance and all sorts of things. So because of it's like ordination and what that kind of means and what that role is has a lot to do with the power that the church has and how it sees itself and how it like confers that power onto an individual. And I mean, look, I know that we're going back to an old clip, but this is why I said at the time that Spider-Man quote lives in my head rent-free. And this is why, because here we go again. With great power comes great responsibility. And the church has not always exercised good responsibility with the amount of power that it's had. And that includes an ordination and how it gives power to certain people and the way that those individuals have them then abused that power.
Absolutely. And we're both ordained.
Yes, you're right. That's a good thing to say.
We're both ordained.
Yeah.
So before we talk about I guess this episode's going to be all about the horrible things that happens in ordination. But I am curious.
Not all about that.
Do you remember your ordination service?
I do. I do remember it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything stand out?
A couple of things. I do remember the weight of the hands
God,
that
so
were on my
heavy.
head and on my shoulders.
I feel like the bishops really try to over-exaggerate that weight, though. I mean, they're really pushing down on you.
That may be true. I have not been elected a bishop, so I do not know.
No, but when the
if
bishop
there are
puts
any,
his hands on
I
your
know,
head,
but
it's
what I'm
like-
saying is maybe they have bishop camp or whatever, and they're like, "Here's how you do this. You put
you're
a
a
lot
bishop-
of weight."
if you're a bishop, holler at us if you go to bishop camp. And
Yeah.
how to
Do
that.
they tell you to push down hard? I don't know, but I remember that. I do remember that.
And there's a lot of hands on you.
I do remember when I put the stole over my head. I remember being worried about my hair and making sure that my hair wasn't like caught under my stool because I have long hair and like look how long my hair is.
So long.
And so I do remember.
Look like
I
a
remember that.
fool up there.
I remember like being like, okay, make sure that I flip my hair out of the way so that the stool doesn't get caught and my hair doesn't get caught. You asked me what I remember. That's one of the things.
No.
And I also was ordained at the same time with 3 other women. We were all ordained as deacons in the United Methodist Church on the same day. And we stood up there together. And I remember when we stood together and people like welcomed us and, you know, celebrated us and clapped for us in that moment, we're kind of all instinctively grabbed hands. And there were like so many pictures taken of that moment, but it's like an iconic memory for me about that time because it reminded me that yes, I was individually ordained, but I was also ordained as part of a group. I was ordained and part of something that was bigger than myself, and I was like being held accountable to what it meant to be ordained. Like other people are ordained, and so now it's like I was entering this like this I don't know, like not status, but like I mean I was entering this like set apart group, and I had to like I was connected to them.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated that moment.
It's a powerful moment. I was there for your ordination, and to be reminded of you know, just how grateful I am to be in a denomination where women are ordained
Fully
and given full authority and power and can be elected to bishops, can serve as senior ministers, right? There's no limit to the role women play in our denomination, which, but also recognize that that's not the case. So as we talk about power,
for a lot of churches.
that's not the case for a lot of churches. And so when we talk about power, you know, it's one of the reasons I'm proud to be United Methodist, because even though we haven't always gotten it right, although we're getting better, there is this sort of, I think, understanding within the United Methodist Church that ordination is both available to everyone and is limited in its authority and power because of how we've organized our denomination, right? Like, laity serve very important roles in our denomination, vote on matters that other traditions reserve only for clergy.
That's
and
right.
So like we are inherently a democratic expression of the church's witness in the world. And it's just, it's powerful to, and thank God, right, that I get to serve alongside incredibly gifted women, because I think that, you know, to limit that is to essentially silence half of the church's voice, and that is no church I want to be a part of.
Yeah. And we also just removed any limitations. The church, Universal United Methodist Church, the global church, I should say, removed, I don't know of any Methodist colonies on Mars yet, but
Global United Methodist Church. The United Methodist Church that is outside of the United States, right? Incorporates the United States and other countries.
yes,
Careful not to say Global Methodist Church.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. That's a different thing now. The United Methodist Church globally has just also removed restrictions prohibiting queer people from being clergy and being ordained and receiving that ordination and that responsibility,
right,
and that authority. And so, I mean, to your point, I think there are churches that are seeking to expand not only the mission of the church and who can be a part of a church, but also seeking to expand who has the authority to act on, speak for, and to lead in particular ways.
Yeah.
the church body.
And I think that that's really important to note because, the thing I remember about my ordination, I remember a lot of things, but I do remember the bishop who ordained me, Bishop McKee, really reiterated to us during rehearsal and prior to the ordination service and probably in his sermon that night.
And he said it multiple times.
All the time, right? That ordination isn't a move where we're set above the laity, laity being non-ordained members of the church, but that we are simply set aside for a specific role and responsibility within the broader church and denomination. And so I think it's really important, that we talk about that, right? My job, my actual job, my professional ministry that I get to do here at First United Methodist Church of Dallas is set apart from the laity of the church in the sense that, like, I spend all my time working on behalf of the United Methodist Church, and particularly this church, to help this church live out the mission. But that the ministry of the church belongs to every baptized member, right? That's why ordination's not a separate sacrament in our denomination, because it's rooted in our baptismal covenant, in the vows we make at baptism, that we are to be ministers of the gospel. Every baptized individual is to be that, right? And to grow into that, to grow into the ministry of the church. And so the laity have ministries, and some are in professional settings within the church. We are all ministers of the gospel. My role as an ordained elder is just to help the church, lead the church in very specific ways. And yes, there are times where I get to speak on behalf of the church, my church and particularly, but that comes with the recognition that the laity also have a responsibility to speak on behalf of the church in a variety of settings.
Yeah, we're all called to witness, to be a witness, in both word and deed, as we've said. I think ordination, because the church has changed so much throughout the years, and because those then who serve the church as ordained people, so priests, ministers, pastors, those ordained roles have changed so much. I do think it's interesting to be with people who, this is going to sound weird, but who give me more power than I
give
myself
Yeah.
in the church. Have you ever had that experience?
Sure.
And I mean,
not out of expectation, though. I think more out of respect for ordination.
Yeah.
I think when people seek me out for prayer, truth is my prayers aren't any more holy than anyone else's prayers.
Right.
But I think it's a respect for the office, right, and the pastoral responsibility I have to them. That's different than maybe the laity with each other. It is different. But not out of expectation. I don't think people expect my prayers to be more holy. I think it's more they just are, they have a level of trust.
Yeah.
Because of our ordination process and because of the relationship we build.
Well, and I was going to say, it's not like being ordained is not like magic, right? We don't have superpowers or magic. We don't have access to a book of magic spells or anything
deacons don't.
Yeah. Okay. Equal. Our ordinations are equal. Thank you.
They might be equal. I'm just saying the spells are just another way we set ourselves apart.
As elders. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And I do think it's also important to say the words and the language that we use to denote the different orders or different ordinations that changes from church to church, and it is always varied, and there is some references in scripture in one way, and some kind of some people talk about bishops, and some places talk about presbyters, and some places talk about deacons, and so it's kind of everywhere. But
so to that point though, I think elder is a order within the ordination process.
Yes.
The United Methodist Church. And deacon is a separate order.
Yes.
And would you like to explain to everyone how that's distinguished?
Well, I mean, how much time do we have? Because I could go into all the details of it. And there are nuances to it. It's kind of like, inside baseball. Okay. So quick outside baseball explanation of the orders. Elders are called to lead and order the life of the church in particular. And deacons are called to connect the church and the world. And so I think of elders as they're going to be primarily senior pastors. They're going to make sure all the administrative councils and committees, and I mean, essentially the kind of the leading of the church happens, well and fully. They're often the primary preaching pastors, kind of speaking to and providing the overall ordering, not only of the administrative position of the church, but also the spiritual life of the church, right? Deacons are ordained to service and ordained to connect in a way to stand in that threshold of the church and the world and make sure, and I think of this a lot, we really are I'm making sure that the door is open and that the church has access to the world and the world has access to the church, and we're not letting that door close and we're not forgetting about each other. And so often deacons serve kind of on the margins or on the peripheral places of the church to make sure that people within the church are moving out, and also making sure that we are invitational and helping to invite those out in.
I think it's great. And it's broad strokes, right?
Yeah, those are very broad strokes.
Deacons can preach.
Oh, yeah.
And elders can do justice ministry outside the church. And so I think it's a way to understand our call. I just thought it was important. We had referenced it a couple times.
Well, and I think, in my opinion, it's really important to have both ordained people in both of those places.
The two orders are important.
Yeah.
Right? Because senior pastors can get so focused on the day-to-day operations of the church that we lose focus of the needs of the world. And to have someone set aside to constantly be reminding the church and other ordained members of the body, right? Hey, look at this problem in the world, or look at this opportunity in the world, or remember the Holy Spirit is not confined to the church building. It's a really vital thing for the church's growth. Yeah.
I would say so. And I believe, it's really humble to serve overall, I would say. I'm always, again, it's not magic. I don't have special powers, but I'm always honored and humbled by the way that I think people look to clergy to help guide them, to walk beside them, to be present with them, to offer a reflection. I always, if I'm going to do a wedding, I always tell couples, look, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I haven't been licensed for that. I'm not trained for that. If you need therapy, you need to go to a counselor and a therapist, a licensed counselor.
Please.
But I'm a pastor. And so what I can offer you is I can reflect on the way that our faith can speak into our marital relationship.
And,
right?
And highlight the spiritual consequences, both good and bad, of what it means to be married, and how are we going to bring our faith into that sort of covenant. And
I'm always honored. It's always an honor to be present and officiate, at a wedding, or to walk with a family through the valley of the shadow of death as they grieve of the loss of a loved one, and they process what that's going to look like. And we come back to, we talk about the kind of the church as this body, but part of the work of the church is to gather the people together and to worship and to remember.
To have an assembly.
And so we assemble, and if our job is to kind of oversee and to be the gatherer of the people, and to guide the people through a service of worship and remembrance and empowerment, and equipping, where we're then we walk out. One of the things I always say at the end of every wedding is, may as you go forth from this sanctuary back into the world, right? So I'm always thinking not just about what happens here in this space, but also recognizing that what happens in the space as we create in terms of gathering people together is also then about what happens afterwards. And so I just think, it's such an honor to be in that position where you're gathering and sending forth.
Yeah.
Where you're reminding and encouraging and equipping them to go forward. So it's kind of this really just, it's this, I don't know, it's like I said, it's very humbling to just be in that role. And again, regardless of how people view the clergy and people's experiences with past clergy, I just, I'll never take for granted the presence that I'm able to provide and that people provide for me. But yeah.
It is an honor. I mean, it's an honor and responsibility. Same Bishop McKee said, what you're called to do is infinitely more important than how you feel about it on any given day.
Yeah.
Which is a really good reminder that there are days I'm like, oh man, well, this sucks. I want to go open up my pie shop or something, or learn how to woodwork. But
someone said one time that it's like when you see a congregant walking towards you, and some days you want to walk towards them, and some days you want to walk away.
Yeah, you're like
you duck into an empty room.
I can't get out of this room, right? I mean,
yeah.
But it's always a responsibility that I see as beyond how I'm feeling in any given moment, because the expectation that comes with our ordination process, right? Well, not every denomination has a process that is this rigorous, and it means that I've been trained to do it. It means that I've studied to do it. It means that I've been observed to do it. It means that I've been affirmed by other clergy to do it. So there's a really laborious process, which I think confers this sort of professional aspect to the job.
Yeah.
That is not. I say professional not as a sterilizing sort of adjective. What I think it means is that there's a reason people seek us out for very specific things, and that is a deep spiritual, usually in deep need where there's deep spiritual need, and that's always an honor to be able to walk with people in that. It's always an honor.
Yeah.
And there are times I feel equipped to do that, and times I don't feel equipped to do that. And it really doesn't matter, because we're always going to be asked to do it. And so we have to extend grace to ourselves as ordained clergy. We have to extend grace to the laity. And we have to realize that all of us are responsible for this church thing. And the more we can democratize our processes and invite people into positions of leadership and authority within the church as a whole, the better we're going to be equipped to live out the church's mission in the world. And I think I try to do that out of my own sort of ministry setting, and it helps to serve alongside other clergy who take that seriously, and we're just kind of normal people too. You know what I mean?
Yes, I feel
that's
normal.
The thing I think that's the thing that's so shocking is I'll be drinking a beer, or be talking about my love of hip hop or whatever, and people be like, "Oh, you listen to J. Cole?" And you'll be like, "Yeah," and they'll be like, "Oh, I thought you're a preacher," and you're like, No, it's okay. We can be normal.
We're both, right? Both and.
We are normal, and we also, like to drink whiskey.
I don't, but yes.
Not all of us do. But if you want someone to drink whiskey with you, I can do it. So I think that's the most important thing is, you're right, there's no magic powers given to us. We're just out of the church's laity come the ordained, right? We're not sent.
In fact, you have to be a member of the church before you can be ordained in the church. So you don't just get to show up out of nowhere. I do think though that there's also a responsibility that we have to kind of make sure that while we're broadening the reach of the gospel and access and voices, we're also tasked with holding to the core of the gospel as well.
Yeah.
So while the reach of the gospel should be broad, we're tasked with kind of keeping
Putting
the church in
boundaries
its
around.
lane.
Right.
And
Totally.
making sure that we're not just,
saying whatever
blah
we want.
and like saying
Yeah.
whatever we want, but also like going like way off course. And so I appreciate being part of a church where there is accountability for clergy, and it's not
Absolutely.
just a free for all. And but there's not, it's not like restrictive in terms like we don't all preach from the same text every single week, and we don't all have to do the same things, and we don't all agree theologically on every like non-essential part of the faith. But we kind of hold the core of Christian tradition solid, and we carry that forward
And we're
for
held
the sake of
accountable
it.
to
And
that.
we're held accountable to that.
For that, and also our conduct, and also
Yes.
how we manage money,
Yes.
and also like what our relationships look like.
Yes.
And I mean, like, that's the beauty of being a part of a denomination that values clergy and clergy's sort of ability to be appointed or sent to a lot of different churches, right?
Yeah.
Is that you have to have a pretty high bar for how we train our clergy.
Right.
And that ultimately, I think, produces really healthy cultures where power can still be abused, but is often shared by the clergy that we have. Because
It's caught. Abuses are caught and addressed as best as we can. We are still human, though.
Totally.
And so we're prone to error, but we believe, and I think are maybe the first to continue to remind the people that God's grace is real, that forgiveness is real, that we can move on to perfection and be sanctified, and that we're better when we are doing that together, and that none of us are alone. So I mean, we have a great responsibility, and there's power that comes with that. And I'm glad to share in that role here, though. I'm really thankful for this church.
Absolutely. I am too. I'm Reverend Mitchell Boone.
And I'm Reverend Elizabeth Moseley. And thanks for listening to Howdy, Theologian, a podcast for all who want to better understand the words we use and how they fit into a progressive theological context in today's world.
We're pastors at First United Methodist Church of Dallas, and you can find us worshiping in person or online on Sunday mornings. Follow our church on socials for more awesome content, and make sure to subscribe and share with your friends.